Many games, no matter how well balanced they are, will tend to fall victim to some pretty unintentionally bad tools, whether it be a bad attack, a bad weapon, or a bad character. The Yakuza series isn't at all safe from this, having some pretty trash abilities. While these abilities may not be completely worthless, as they might have some various niche uses, they will make you either say, oh man, why did I unlock this? Or, why would I unlock this? In Yakuza 3, heat generation is a fair amount slower than it is in some of the later games. To combat this, you usually have to cosplay as your stepdad and get absolutely hammered in order to speed up your generation a bit. Now, staying drunk isn't too hard. You can carry around bottles of sake or stop by a bar whenever you pass one. Or, at least, that is until you unlock one of the revelation abilities. The move in question is a hit action called Essence of Drunken Thrust. And while it is one of the beloved stand there, do nothing, then press triangle and wow cool free damage attacks, it may actually hinder you a bit because whenever you do this hit action, the devs implemented a bit of balancing by sobering you up each time you use the attack. Being sober isn't too bad, as it does reduce the number of enemies that spawn on the street, I'm pretty sure. But considering how easy it is to use, there may be many times where you go to do something else and accidentally do the hit action, especially since you can't hold the camera reset button to prevent yourself from using hit actions like you can in the later games, because it was made before they came out with that feature. This exact same issue exists in Judgment and Lost Judgment, although it isn't as bad. Being drunk in these games also speeds up your heat generation, and although the abilities are completely optional purchases, these two games also have something that sobers you up when you use it. However, in the Judgments, when you use the EX Drunken Fist thing, you become completely sober, rather than just a little bit. It's also just like 3 in that it is actually really bloody easy to use by accident, and you can say bye-bye to your buff. I feel these abilities would honestly be a bit more useful in real life than in games. I mean, imagine going to some pubs with your mates, you know, you're all completely hammered, and then you come home and you just bash a couple things, and then, I probably shouldn't say that. One honestly good thing about these abilities though is that drinking different drinks can provide you with a little bit of XP. So to circumvent the issue of the game preventing you from drinking more, you can just find the nearest enemies and press triangle. So, although this isn't exactly a thing in the Kaito files, there's no completion list in that DLC, so drinking drinks you haven't drank to get drunk is rather pointless. There's an ability that lets you drink as much as you goddamn want, which would be useful in Yagami, but for Kaito, once you've hit your max drunkenness level and filled up your EX gauge, there's no more reason to drink anything else. Kaito files does balance this out by providing you with some nice buffs when you're drunk that increase your EX gauge build-up and reduce its depletion when you're in EX boost. However, whenever you use any heat action, it's gone. Any of them. Not one specific one, it's literally anything. Then you're sobered up. Like, oh yeah, let me slam this guy with a bike, and suddenly Kaito's a member of the water gang and swears off drinking for the rest of his life. Speaking of EX gauge build-up, because someone on the RGG Studio development team has a smoking fetish, you can actively go out of your way to disease your lungs in both Judgment and Lost Judgment. No Kawana e-cigarettes for Takayuki Yagami. This mechanic without unlocking any abilities serves literally no purpose besides pleasuring the guy with the smoking thing, you know. So you have to unlock an ability to make it worth your while. It costs 180 SP in total to get the most out of it in Judgment, and 13,100 SP in Lost Judgment. But to even do it in the first place, you have to go all the way over to a Popo and buy cigarettes, because despite being an addict living in an attic, Yagami has none lying around in his office, nor do enemies drop them or anything. Once you've obtained a packet of them, you have to run all the way over to certain positions around the map, press X, and sit there and watch Yagami very, very slowly smoke. So, how's your day been? Yeah. What are you up to? You just watching a YouTube video? Oh, you're watching a video of Yagami smoke. Oh, okay. Yeah, it's pretty boring, isn't it? Anyway, then after all that, you get literally piss all built up, like nothing. And then you compare it to other ways to build up your EX gauge. Watch how quickly I can get a completely max EX gauge in Judgment with the power of Flux Fissure. You can't even use it as a technique to build up a bunch of your gauge outside of combat, because the game won't let you have another smoke even if you go to a different area. Like, literally, why would you unlock this shit? Why would you buy cigarettes? Why would you do any of this? You can literally just punch a guy and have it be significantly more worth your time. Admittedly, it's a lot more useful in Lost Judgment, as it fills half the gauge, you can skip the cutscene, and you can smoke multiple times, although as Kaito you can only fill up one gauge each time. But even if it does fill up more, you still have to buy the bloody things. It's pretty bad, but at least it isn't like another Judgment ability that is, fun fact, literally worthless, as in it does literally nothing. Well, as in it does nothing as long as you're not using a controller. It's not the most important thing already as it is, but the ability that vibrates your controller when you hover over an investigable item that does literally nothing at all whatsoever if you're using a keyboard and mouse, yeah, A very small issue that's only recently popped up, considering how new the PC ports are, but I don't know why they didn't think to do anything for that, you know, but whatever. And you know, while these two abilities are far from worthless, there are two abilities that I can think of that are rather misleading, much like if you bought that previous one without a controller. That being these two in Yakuza 0 and Lost Judgment. The Yakuza 0 ability is an incredibly useful counter called Thug Cunning Harsh Lesson for Majima's Thug Style, which while only being usable in the third heat bar, is pretty easy to pull off with some rewarding potential for follow-ups. Or at least it would be easy to pull off if the game didn't outright lie to you and how it tells you what buttons to push. It says to hold the fighting stance button, then press the heavy attack button when an enemy attacks. That's true for most of the counters in the game, but for this one, that's not true. You actually have to press the grab button to do the counter. Then there's Lost Judgment's ability for the Tiger Style, which makes it so that when your charge finishes hit an enemy's guard, it doesn't break the guard, but instead just hits them through it, thus acting as if they were never blocking in the first place. Yet again, another really bloody useful ability, but it took about a good literal actual year, not joking, to figure out what the hell it does, because it says to hold the light attack button after pressing the heavy attack button, which does nothing. It literally confused the shit out of me too, because there's no effect or anything, and I just thought the enemies kept dropping their guards before I would hit them anyway. But no, just like how I kept trying to press R1 and triangle as Majima, I was yet again tricked by RGG Studio. Here's another cheeky trick by those tricky bastards, although I will admit that maybe it's a language barrier sort of thing. In Ishin, there's an ability for the katana style that allows you to press triangle at the same time as landing a finisher in order to deal a bit of extra damage at the cost of some of your heat. Now obviously this won't be an issue in the Kiwami remake when it comes out, but I couldn't exactly get a good understanding as to what I was purchasing. To me, I just saw triangle, oh okay, yeah, I guess I'll get that. But little did I know, it would be the biggest goddamn mistake of my entire life. So after doing some rough estimations by comparing screenshots, you can see that a regular charge finisher did this much damage to an enemy's health bar, whereas this special finisher did about this much. From my estimations, I have determined that it basically does double damage. Sounds pretty good. That is, until you see how much heat it consumes. It consumes about a fifth of the gauge, which wouldn't be a problem were it not for the fact that heat is extremely annoying to generate in Ishin, as just landing a regular charge finisher generates less heat than the special one consumes, and as you can see from this clip, just literally taking bugger all damage from this enemy here drained even more heat than the special finisher did. You're better off just literally doing 2 regular charge finishers, because then you'll get back more heat than you would have consumed using the special one, and you'll most likely deal more damage. If you like to mash triangle whenever you're trying to do double finishes like me, then you'll more likely than not accidentally mash the button a bit too much and just completely waste your heat. I barely use the katana style enough as it was, as I usually prefer to shoot my enemies in the head. But when I got that ability, I had to be so goddamn careful to not accidentally use it. Hopefully, it's not an issue in the remake, but we're yet to see. Speaking of terrible abilities, why don't we have a look at Like a Dragon's plethora of them? Well, that's ironic, because Like a Dragon's actually pretty— Shut the fuck up! Anyway, there are a lot of abilities that might be outclassed by other ones, but most of the time it's intentional, as you'll get stronger abilities to use the more you level up, making those earlier ones comparatively worse. Except for head trauma. But the big one that always sticks in my mind are these 2 kick attacks in Ichiban's Freelancer class. Specifically, Ruffian's Kick. You unlock it 4 levels after unlocking Drop Kick, except this one doesn't claim to have a higher crit rate, as well as it costing an additional third of the MP cost of Drop Kick. I went and I ran a test and did both Drop Kick and Ruffian's Kick 6 times each on the same enemies, with all the same parameters each time. For Drop Kick, the average damage was 552 when rounded up, and with Ruffian's Kick, I got an average damage of 565, again rounded up, which is higher than the damage of Drop Kick, but by literally 13 damage. It's pretty pissed, because that's literally 2.3% of the damage dealt by Drop Kick, meaning that after getting an additional 4 levels and spending an additional 33% of your MP that you would have used for Drop Kick, you get to deal an additional 2.3% damage. 2.3. Like, what the hell? Obviously, this isn't a truly proper, raw, scientific analysis, as each enemy you use it on may vary, but it does show that Ruffian's Kick is pretty goddamn worthless. There are way more abilities that suffer the same issue in this game, but this one will always stick in my mind as being properly dumb. Although I only looked at a few, there are still many other attacks or abilities that you could argue are rather bad, so feel free to comment down below something you thought of and why you think it's doo-doo. I would ask you, however, to not begin your comment with the words, "you forgot," because if you do, I will come to your house and